today's world, the people in the asbestos business know that in order to maintain profitability, they have to minimize the costs of prevention and compensation. That means if they spend a lot of money for industrial ventilation in the factory and for sanitary provisions so that the workers don't walk home with the dust on their clothes and endanger their families, and they put cancer warnings on the product, then the business becomes unprofitable. And so you look around the world and you see in the countries where the asbestos industry is flourishing, they don't have to spend much on prevention or compensation. And since this is part of the business model of the asbestos industry today, an industry that knows it's building its fortune in proportion to the number of people that are going to die. And the more business they do, the more people they kill. And so that's why I call it a criminal industry. And the industry, in order to reduce the costs of prevention, does what it can to keep the public from understanding how dangerous asbestos is. Because once people understand how dangerous asbestos is, it gets banned. This has happened all over the world. And this is all, this talk about controlled use of asbestos is just a euphemism for business as usual. It's really, it's a lie. There is no control. So it's a fantasy for companies to talk about controlled use when there are millions of construction workers going to be using their products. No government inspectors are going to be standing around watching this. It's very bad right now. Thailand has one of the highest rates of per capita usage of asbestos. If you take the tonnage of asbestos imported and used each year and divide it by the population in the country, you get a very high number. Compared to almost all countries of the world. Thailand and Vietnam are very, very much at the top by that measure. What this means is that 35 years from now, you're going to see an epidemic of disease as a result of this high use of asbestos in the country. We know this because it's happened all over the world. And you have an opportunity to prevent this from happening by first stopping the continuing use of asbestos in buildings and vehicles, and then second, trying to do something about the fact that it's already in so many structures and will eventually have to be repaired and replaced. So what a lot of countries have done is develop procedures for dealing with the asbestos in place. Then you still have all the structures in place, you still have all the brake linings in the cars and trucks that are still made with asbestos. For these things you need to have procedures to deal with it, which require a little more public health infrastructure. But what many countries have done is they say, well, if you've got asbestos in buildings, first start with the schools, start with the hospitals, the daycare centers, and develop a model and say, okay, there needs to be an inventory of the building. An expert has to go through the building and identify all the places in the building where there's asbestos. The expert should also make some comments on the condition that the asbestos is in. So if you have badly deteriorating asbestos materials, that becomes a priority for removal. And then the people who do the removal have to be properly trained and have to use proper equipment and procedures to do that. So you saw some of the movies. The big obstacle is that you've got some companies that are refusing to change over from asbestos. And I think that's only really one company that's a big problem, from what I'm told. And I suspect that the ownership of that company is not all Thai money. I think you might find Russian money behind some of that.
Yeah.
Because the Russians are very anxious to export asbestos. In Thailand, that means that the cost of building a townhouse with a non-asbestos roof is increased over the cost of building the townhouse with an asbestos cement roof by $65 US. That's not very much when you think about the cost of building a townhouse. And so this is the kind of thinking that needs to be applied so that you're not endlessly adding to the minefield of contamination of your living environment in this country.